All right, welcome back to Let the Journey Begin. I am your host, Jason Waller, alongside my co-host, Hilary Roberts. How you doing, Hills?
I am wonderful.
Yeah, this weekend was pretty incredible, huh?
Oh my gosh, it was amazing. It was just absolutely amazing. I was super stressed leading up to it, having to write the foundation song.
Leading up to what?
Leading up to the Red Songbird and Can event that was featured on the Hills. It's going to be featured. Y'all see it in June for the finale of the Hills. And it was such an honor to be part of that. And and it was just, we made a decision a week and a half before the event to write a song for the foundation. And that was like, oh my gosh. And so I was a little stressed.
It was, the event was absolutely incredible. It was one of the first events we took all the COVID precautions. Every single person had to get tested before they came, and again, we were distanced and everything was phenomenal, but the event itself went incredible. Hilary, the song was unreal. I mean, it literally,
Thanks.
the first time he sang it to me, gave me, put tears to my eyes, gave me goosebumps. And then obviously hearing you sing it there, it just really resonated and it moved every single person in the audience. And it's amazing to be able to see where substance abuse and mental health and trauma, where everything is at right now. To be able to have the platforms that we have and to be able to share it on that wide of a range is it's just an answer to prayer.
It was amazing. And then really watching your wife step up. Am I allowed to say what she did?
Yeah, of course.
Stepping up and singing with me at the end and singing another song that we've done that was actually our first top 10. So that was pretty amazing. And she just looked beautiful and just precious being pregnant. It was so amazing. And, which also leads me to our amazing guest. Our guest today is someone very special to me. He is a Grammy-award winning record producer, Grammy-award winning songwriter. He is a DJ. He is my amazing producer, my brother, my friend, and he also has been writing all these songs with me for the last 3.5 years. Damon Sharpe, everybody.
Damon.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
What's up, bro? Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely.
You were at the event, man. What'd you think?
Oh, man, it was incredible. It was incredible. I mean, it was so intimate, but it's so well done at the same time. It felt like a big production in a microcosm, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think you guys did a really good job at pulling something off that was epic, but also was so intimate and beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you, man. And thank you for, helping Hilary and contributing all that time and energy into that. And that's such a short amount of time.
Yeah.
It definitely paid off, but we're obviously very grateful to have you here. And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, and so Damon and I met almost 4 years ago, actually. And Damon heard my story and started supporting me in the message that I wanted to come across with. But Damon, I'm so excited. We're going to get back to that. Why don't we start with a question that we ask all our guests? We may not ask any of the other questions, and Jason's going to ask you what we ask all our guests.
Okay.
All right, bro. All right, we're getting into this now, okay? Let me sit up a little bit.
Right.
Here we go. I'm getting old.
Let's go.
All right, Damon. What did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh, wow. I think it kind of shifted. I think when I was really young, it was always kind of the typical things. It's like, I want to be, a policeman. I want to be a fireman. I want to be a scientist. I kind of ran the gambit. And then probably around age, 8 or 9, I kind of discovered a love for dance and music and acting and it's funny, somewhere at home, I have an old thing from school when I was like 6, and it's got a list of all these things that I wanted to accomplish in my life. And weirdly enough, the only thing I have not checked off on that box yet is retiring. But retiring by 50. So I'm getting close. So pretty soon, if I decide I want to, I probably never would, because I would be absolutely bored. But like all the other things that I had on this crazy list, I have achieved.
Do you mind sharing
I'll get
those?
back to you on that. I'll have to track that down and get it for you guys.
Oh, okay.
Do you mind sharing the ones that you've already accomplished?
Gosh, you know what? I don't remember all of them, but one of them was to I think one of them was to move to LA, which I did. At that point in time, I lived in Phoenix, Arizona. One of them was to move to LA. One was to become famous, whatever that means, in whatever shape or form.
You're famous.
No, but when I came to LA and I was a teen star and I was on NBC, and we can get into that bigger story, but that was an early on thing for me, being a teen idol and being in all the teen magazines and having my own TV show and having it kind of ripped out from underneath me, which was a great life lesson. It also had, what else? I don't remember what the amount of money it was, but there was make a certain amount of money, which I did. And it was probably really small, because when you're that age, you're like, ooh, $1,000 is so much money. And then you get older and you're like, $1,000 is nothing, as you get older. But when you're a kid, it's everything, right? I need to get that list, and we can flash it when this airs.
I love it. Yeah, 100%. No, it's cool to kind of look back at that. But before we go into that, I want to hear more about that story. I'd love to know what was that transitional period though that happened for you at that young age, from being those firemen, wanting to be the policeman, to what really. Do you remember that turning point where you're like, oh man, I really want to get into music, dance, that whole genre?
You know what?
Stuff.
I think being a kid, just seeing, in the 80s and 90s, there were so many dance-driven kind of movies. And I remember seeing those as a kid, and just, something in me was just it just lit a fire. And I was like, I want to do that. And I just immediately went and started I actually took breakdancing lessons first, street dancing. And I guess the way it really transitioned was, I went in, I was taking breakdance lessons, and the teacher, who became a mentor for me, a woman by the name of Julie Wren, she came and grabbed me out of the class, because I was one of the only guys there, right? And pulled me to another window at the studio and said, have you ever thought about doing jazz dance? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know if that's for me. I feel like that's more for girls. I was 12 at the time, 12 or 13. Right. And she's like, well, you see all those girls in there? And I was like, yeah. She goes, if you take this class, you get to meet all those girls. And I was like, all right, I'm in. Yeah. Let's go. So I ended up doing jazz dance, which turned into competitive dance. So I started coming back and forth to California. And then it kind of started becoming a reality, because as I was coming back and forth to do competitions, I started slowly booking jobs. I booked a Pepsi commercial. Then I booked a McDonald's commercial. Then I told my parents, I was like, look, I want to come to LA for a summer and pursue this. At that point, the fire was lit, right?
Right.
And when I got here, things just started connecting really fast. I booked a tour, and at 15, I was on the road for an entire summer, touring as a backup dancer for a pop singer. And then, came back from that, and then booked the TV show that I was talking about on NBC shortly after. And, so it was a pretty quick ascension into what I wanted to do, which was really cool. It's kind of like I went from 0 to 100, by the time we all moved to California, I was just this kid going to, home study school, hoping that something would connect. And then overnight walking down the street in Westwood, California, and somebody being like, Damon Sharpe. And you're like, who do I know? And it was because the show was already on the air,
Wow.
So it really blew up overnight. And we went from, these 15-year-old, 16-year-old kids to having our own TV show, a record deal, our own board game, dolls, pajamas, the whole gambit. And then that lasted for about a year and a half. And then it literally overnight, the show was canceled, the record deal was repealed. And like Hilary said, I went from taking pictures with Will Smith at events to fast forward 2 years later, serving him a Pepsi as a waiter. So it was a really, really amazing life lesson. And I think that really ties into how easily it is for people to fall down the road of addiction and mental illness, right? Because you feel like you've achieved something in your life and you're at a certain place, and to have that all taken away is such an ego crusher, right? And luckily I treated it as a blessing, right? And I somehow, because I had great parents around me and a great support system, it kept me from completely just crumbling, because there were so many dark voices obviously there. And I remember when I was waiting tables, there were times when I'd walk out and I'd grab a bottle of wine off of the, I never went down the road of addiction, but it was close. I would grab a bottle of wine, I'd go home, I'd drink the whole bottle of wine, or I'd go, I'd go home and I'd make pasta, and then I'd pour a bunch of amaretto into milk. And like I said, I never fully went over the line, but those dark times, luckily I was able to defeat those dark times and keep moving forward. But I feel like I was right there where with how hard of an ego blast it was, and going from making 6 figures a year to spending every penny of it and being on unemployment, that was a huge blow to my mental health.
Wow. And see that it really, for our listeners, that shows the difference between an alcoholic and somebody that goes down a road, maybe has some difficult times, but because a real alcoholic, it doesn't matter what opportunity they get. And it can be something great going on or something bad going on, but they will drink and drink. And that's the difference. I mean, you're not an alcoholic, but you went through that. And so out of that lesson, how do you feel like that changed you for the better?
Oh, I mean, it changed everything for me, because at the time, I'm a teenager. So, and you're famous, you're on the cover of teen magazines and you're on television, you think you're indestructible. I remember thinking to myself, I'm never going to have to work another job in my life. I'm this, and you kind of feel invincible. And then to have that all taken away and smacking my ego to the ground was the lesson that I needed. So then years later, once I kind of got it together and stopped having a pity party for myself, that's when I went back to school for music, and I got a new agent, and I found my mentor who mentored me in music. And then things started to turn around because I started, doing the legwork. And now I really attest, I mean, my work ethic, Hilary, I don't stop. And part of that goes back to being fortunate enough to go through that experience of achieving something and then losing it all, to come back to a place where now I'm like, I'm not going to let that happen again. And that was just one chapter in my life. Then I had a chapter after that where I met my mentor. We got signed to 3 different record deals, right? We went through 3 different record deals in a period of 3 years, only to, at the end of that 3-year period, to have it all crumble again. And because I was at that point, I was like, I don't want to be in another boy band after being in like 17 boy bands, signed multiple times. I just said, I remember being on the conference call, and at the time it was with Warner Brothers Records, and they were like, hey, you're each going to get a $25,000 advance. And at the time that was a lot of money to me. And I was like, you know what, guys, I don't think this is right for me at this point in my life. And I hung up the phone. I was like, what am I going to do now? I'm back on unemployment, not sure how I'm going to pay my bills. And I just went into a state of free fall, and I just kind of said, I just put it in fate into the universe and just said, hopefully this will pan out the way it does. It's supposed to. And I went back, I was waiting tables still, and, was just grinding whatever I could do to make money. Right. I mean, at one point I was interning at a studio, literally cleaning toilets just so I could pay bills and learn my craft. And as fate would have it, then, a couple months later, my mentor, a guy by the name of Rick Wake, who took me under his wing for the boy band, called me and said, hey, I found this CD of songs, on my desk. And there's some really great songs on here. He's like, you wrote these? And I was like, yeah. I said, I've been trying to tell you for 3 years that I love production and writing, but you always looked at me as kind of the boy band kid. And he's like, Damon, there's some great songs on here. He's like, you should come and work with me as a producer and a writer. And I was like, I don't know. I was there for 3 years. It didn't really pan out. And he's like, all right, I'll tell you what, let me run with these songs. He's like, I'll get back to you. And I'm like, oh, okay, great. Yeah, I'm never going to hear back. And hang up the phone thinking that I'm never going to hear back again. And as fate would have it, a few weeks go by and I get a call from Rick, and he's like, hey, I got a couple of your songs placed. And I'm like, really? And at that time, I didn't understand the gravity of it. I didn't really understand what a song placement was or how much it could change your life, right? So he's like, yeah. He's like, do you know who Jennifer Lopez is? And I was like, yeah, of course. I mean, she wasn't huge yet, but she was just about to be J-Lo, right? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, she wants to do your song, Why'd You Lie to Me? And I'm like, okay, great. And he goes, there's another new artist named Anastasia from overseas who's about to blow up, who wants to do your song called Love Don't Cost a Thing. And I'm like, okay, this sounds great. And he's like, all right, I'm going to get back to you. Again, I hang up the phone thinking I'm never going to hear back. So then a few more weeks go by. I get a call from a friend of mine who's an intern at a label. And she's like, Damon, did you do a song for Jennifer Lopez? And I'm like, well, I think I did. And she's like, go to the newsstand right now, pick up R&R magazine and look at the back. And I'm like, okay. So I skirt over really fast to a newsstand. I pick it up. Sure enough, on the back, there's a picture of Jennifer Lopez. It says, Love Don't Cost a Thing. And my name is there. And I'm like, what is happening? So I call Rick, and he's like, yeah, bro. He's like, I didn't want to say anything. And he and I are very much alike like that. I don't like to jinx things, so I don't tell anybody until it manifests. But he's like, yeah. He goes, exchanged hands. Anastasia cut the other song. J-Lo cut this song. It went from her not wanting the song to making the record to now going to radio this week. And then when that connected,
Wow.
That ended up becoming a #1 record for me. And as soon as it connected, my life completely changed. And I haven't looked back since. This is 20 years ago, and I have not looked back since.
I have a question for you. I mean, that's absolutely incredible, and that's so phenomenal. But obviously, I think we both can see, going back to the discouragement and having everything pulled out from under you. We've seen a lot of people that has impacted and that has had them go down, whether it's through the depression and the shame and the guilt that comes with, losing all that stuff, but also there could have been pre-existing conditions we don't know. I mean, what were some of the things? I'm sure I'm speculating here, but I mean, I'm sure you've seen people that have gone through that and have not made it the way that you've made it. Correct? They've taken that
100%.
deeper, darker path. What do you think? What do you think really separated you from that and going down that versus somebody that is unfortunately taking a right turn?
Well, like you said, it's unfortunately, I think there's a lot of different factors, right? I think sometimes inherently people are genetically more predisposed for certain things, right?
Yes.
I think inherently inherently in your nature. I think also depending on the people you have around you, sometimes they're better at being a support system. Not that everybody isn't a great support system, but some people are just better at doing that, right? Sometimes people are enablers around you and they enable you. But, for me, I think I'm just super fortunate that I had a great support system. And I think for me, like I said, luckily I wasn't genetically predisposed to anything. And, even if I was going down a path where I'm like, all right, I'm going to drink a whole bottle of wine, I'm like, okay, I'm good. Now I'm, I don't want to drink again for another, few weeks or whatever.
That's a big thing, because there's also, just because you go drink a bottle of wine doesn't classify you as an alcoholic. There's also a big part of life where it's called experimental phases. You know what I mean? And you go through different things and you don't go down that path. Was your parents a huge support factor in this?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I owe them everything. They moved to LA so I could pursue my career, literally. They're both teachers. They're retired now, but yeah, they moved to LA so I could pursue my career.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's absolutely incredible.
And always allowed me to make my own mistakes. Sometimes I'm like, why didn't you guys have me save that money? And why did you? But you know what? I'm thankful that they did allow me to make my own decisions, because I wouldn't be the man I am today if they didn't allow me to make those decisions.
When you said that when the Warner Brothers label had that $25,000 gig for you, and you were in that state of, it's kind of like, if I don't do this, what else am I going to do? Why did you not do that? Why did you not sign the deal?
I think at that point, I don't know. I had a weird sense of, and I used to kind of scoff at this when I was younger and like kind of make fun of it, but I kind of knew in my heart that it wasn't the right situation for me. It was there's so many times in your life when your gut tells you something and you don't listen to it and it's always a mistake. And my gut told me it wasn't the right choice. My gut was like, Damon, you've been down this road. You've done all these boy bands. You've really been working hard to, hone your craft as a producer and a songwriter. What's the worst thing that can happen? At this point, you were already broke once before. What's the big deal if you're broke again? You can work hard and get back to that place. So I think that was kind of what my gut told me,
Yeah. And so you've witnessed people that have struggled with alcoholism, mental health, all that kind of stuff within your family. And what has that been like for you as a normal person watching that?
I mean, it's really hard, because I spent the last probably 20 years of my life, trying to make certain relationships work within my family. And now I'm kind of, I'm estranged from one family member, and it's hard for me, it's hard, but I kind of got to a point where I felt, and I hate to compare it to this, but I felt like the guy that's chasing the girl that just is not interested. And it's like, no matter what I do, no matter how hard I would try, go visit, emails, phone calls, Facebook messages, anything I could do to re-spark and rekindle this family relationship, nothing seems to work, and at this point I've kind of put it out into the universe where when they're ready, they'll hopefully come back to the table. I'm hoping that they're gonna make that realization at some point. And I think there was definitely some drug and alcohol abuse for a window that was happening with them, and I think that definitely plays into it. But I also think there's potentially a chemical imbalance that's never been looked at. We've spoken about that, and they don't particularly want to even consider that as a possibility.
Wow.
Which is very sad to me, because I even the years of therapy I went to was incredible for me. Like, it's so empowering and makes you realize, I feel like when you're with the right therapist and they walk you down that path, they present the right questions to you, it really empowers you and allows you to not harbor all this guilt inside, because I had guilt for a long time. Oh, what if, the family moved here to LA for me,
Right. So, I mean, looking at that, because I was going to ask you, what are some of the things that you took? Obviously, therapy was a big component of it, but with you and within the family dynamic, what are some of the tools what are some of the stuff that you guys went through, that maybe the emotional keywords that you went through, and, how you process that to being able to be in a place where you are? Because it sounds like you're in acceptance right now, right? And you've turned it over. I think it'd be very huge, because so many people, look, we always come on here and talk about us being the people that were the victims of alcoholism alcoholism and addiction, and we can talk to another addict and fully understand that. But I think a big part of our messaging is hearing it from the other side and how it's really impacted you guys, the normies we like to call you, but how it's impacted you, but also, the steps that you took to get into that freedom. Because again, is what I heard you saying is you were in the form of insanity trying to, chasing that girl that doesn't want you, right? And I mean, you're not getting the reciprocation from that. So do you mind just sharing a little bit about that the insanity piece and how you got out of that and maybe the family around?
Yeah. And what made you start therapy? I'd love to hear how that happened too later.
Yeah, like I said, I think a lot of it for me, I started realizing because my parents moved here to LA for me to pursue my career, I think there was a lot of resentment from my siblings. And then I started taking on that guilt, and I was like, I would feel guilty for the successes that I've had and guilty, for the fact that they moved here for my career. And, now my sister and I have really come to good terms and we're on great terms now. I think part of that is chalked up to the fact that she has kids now. So I think she views life much differently because she has children and understands that, parents are going to make choices and you can't really hold one against the other. It's like I said, I was 15 at the time, and I think my siblings were still holding that against me, like I'm this terrible person for wanting to move to LA to pursue my dreams, and holding it against my parents as well for moving so I could pursue my dreams. But if it was my brother or sister that would have said, I want to move, they would have went for them as well. It wasn't like there was any favorite, golden child syndrome or anything. It was literally like, I just happened to be the oldest and I wanted to make this move. So like I said, for me, I felt guilt for a long time about that. Like, wow, they're mad at me because I moved to LA and like I said, weirdly enough, I probably felt better when things were bad for me. When I was on unemployment, I couldn't pay my bills and things were going terrible for me in my career. Like it was easier to accept that. And then when this, God bless, this second wave of success has come for me as a producer and a songwriter and now as an artist, I've learned strictly really through therapy, finding the right therapist, going through multiple therapists and finding that right person that asked me the right questions, and right. I took my mom with me and I've really talked through these things and, it's still hard. It's still a journey and a challenge every day, especially being estranged,
I appreciate you sharing that, man.
Thank you for your vulnerability.
Well, that honesty I think is huge though. And it can connect with all situations, all walks of life. And I think it's very important that we get that messaging out there. And, I'd love though to hear, the positive side of that is the solution is what were some of those things that what were the big takeaways that you took from it for yourself though? Because again, as a 15-year-old kid, you went through, you were going through what you were just trying to pursue. Right. And I don't see any fault at that. How did you give yourself grace?
I think it's just been a process. It's really been a long journey and a process. And it's really only been in the past maybe 3 to 5 years that I've really come to terms with that. And like I said, I think a lot of that comes from also that I made the effort and reached out and attempted to kind of try to bridge the gap, right? And like I said, it worked amazingly with my sister and unfortunately not so much with my brother.
That's
well, and I can say this, the fact that there are a lot of people that are normal that don't go to therapy, and the fact that you sought and you found the right therapist, and like it sounds like you tried a few and then you finally settled on one that did work, which was so you're still looking at yourself. So that's I think that's a big takeaway, because any person's going to benefit if they have self-reflection and if they're willing to do the work. I mean, and you do the work. Yeah. And I think that's wonderful. And I also feel like, from my own stuff that I've been through, people have stood in the gap for some of the relationships that have suffered for me. And it's like, kind of like you and I, you and I are brother and sister. Mm-hmm. And then later on, I got to meet Jay, and so I've got two. But I'm good with both of my brothers now. But I get this love in my life, and it's wonderful. And so you have a sister that you have a sibling that has your back. That's what I'm trying to say.
No, and my sister is amazing as well, and my brother is. I think he just needs to. not live in a defensive world all the time, and be open to possibilities and open to conversations. I think when he gets to that point, maybe I can try breaching that conversation again. But
Yeah.
right now it's like beating on a brick wall at this point, and that's why I had to, for the sake of my wife and my daughter, kind of step away from that because it was a little toxic for me.
But I think the biggest thing for the biggest takeaway is what you said, though. It took years of work.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And people are always wanting, I want it, I want it now, I want it in a month, I want it in 2 months. It's like, that's the biggest thing is it's taken me 12 years to get where I'm at. You know what I mean? It's taken,
Yep.
and again, this happened to you when you were 15 and it was years of work to get there and it was
Yes.
not giving up. But to see that you went from a lot of that shame and almost self-sabotaging your own life to being in a form of acceptance and cleaning your side of the street up. And, that's all you can do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you've done your part. So I commend you with that. But I think those are
Thank you.
so valuable is you took ownership, you took accountability, you made amends. But the other big piece to it is you did the work.
That's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
and the work continues. And the work continues. That's the thing.
Some of you know that I'm a recording artist, so all the songs that you've heard that have been released have all been written with. We did one that we didn't write, which was the remake of Back to Life that went #1, and that was with Damon. But all these songs that we've done are foundation song, and let me just tell you, the most humble guy, amazing guy. And I really appreciate you. We get to do this music with
Thank
a
you.
message, and we get to do
Absolutely.
all kinds of fun things. And you're just an amazing human being, Damon.
Thank you.
So I want to ask you one question that we ask all of our listeners. If you were to give all of our listeners one action for the day to help their life, what would it be?
Don't listen to the dark voices. I mean, that's for me I don't even know where I read that or who told that to me, but when somebody told me that, I just remind myself, if I start to go down that road again, I'm like, nope, not listening to this voice. Nope. I am not going there because it's so common for that to happen, I think, to everyone, even people who won't admit that it happens. I think we all have these insecurities and doubts and guilt and shame and fear and pride. I mean, I think for me, those two things were things I really had to let go in my life. Fear and pride. Once I was able to start, it's still a challenge every day, but being able to put those behind me and not worry so much about what everybody else is saying, it's a game changer. If you can stop listening to those voices, like I said, literally voices or voices in your head. If you can start to kind of guffaw at those and leave those out, I believe you'll see so much progress.
Oh, that's
Amen.
amazing.
What a way to wrap it up. Hey, dude, look, thank you so much for taking the time to hop on.
Thank you.
And we're very grateful for you. And what a powerful message, man. Keep up the great work.
Thank you so much, brother. So I have to say, I'm really glad that we had him on because, just like you and I connected, he and I connected musically, and he really encouraged me and my gift. And I was terrified going into the studio. I hadn't been there in a long time.
Right.
And it was my dream to be more of a mainstream artist, and everything I went through. And this, Damon is just the salt of the earth and a good man. And, he has a lot more deeper stuff that we could have gotten into. But let me tell you something, that man has put up and watched people that he's really cared for pass away from all kinds of stuff.
No, and you could see, and it's crazy because, meeting him, and we've come in contact multiple times. We got to spend some time with him, and just such a great, sweet guy. And you would never think, just by talking to him and spending time with him, that he's had to deal with a lot of these underlying issues. And I mean, it just shows how much it pays off when you do the work. And it's just so cool to see him be so open and vulnerable around what he's gone through. Because I think when you get to that place when you can utilize those very damning experiences and turn it into motivation and look, and have positive light on it. Look at where it's taken him now.
Absolutely.
So it's cool. Such a great guy. And I love the fact that we had somebody that is personally not struggling with themselves with, substance abuse or any of those issues, to be able to give a perspective of what it's like to walk through it. And I think we should have more guests like that, because it really kind of makes everything come full circle about the impact that it's had and how it impacts them as individuals, and with his own family members and how it's really weighed on his heart to go through these trials and these tribulations. And it's good for us to hear that.
It's so good because then we can see how we impact. We don't just impact, we get caught up in our own little recovery stuff, but to say, oh, wow, so these other people are affected. And
Exactly.
it's truly a family disease. And it's not just, but it's also friends when we've had friends affected. And like I said, people that weren't family that passed away. But yeah, it's incredible, but he does the work and that's the difference.
Amen. Amen. What a good man. What a great guest. Thank you for being here in person. I didn't even get a touch on that. You're here in person. Wow.
Not really. This is actually a hologram.
Oh, God. And we are out. Thank you, guys. Please be sure, if you haven't already, to like, subscribe on whichever platform you listen, which now it includes YouTube. So like, subscribe, leave us a review. Please let us know your thoughts. We really appreciate it. And we look forward to catching up with you guys next week.
Thank you. Bye.